Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. Today, I want to talk about leveling. For those of you that are trying to get ready for the raid next week, while right now Bungie haven't confirmed the minimum required power level, what we do know for a fact is that the higher your power level, the better off you'll be. That's hardly rocket science. Sure, we could hazard a guess based on the Nightfall that it might be something like 270 minimum, 280 recommended, but in truth, that doesn't really matter. What matters is making sure that you are as powerful as you can possibly be. I've been playing pretty much non-stop since launch, working on leveling up all 3 characters, and during this time, I've built a pretty solid understanding of what you should be doing, when, and more importantly, what you should be saving for a later time in your power curve. So, in this video, I want to focus on 5 tips to help you break through 280 and into that 290 power bracket. If you do enjoy this video and you do find it helpful, then a like would be super appreciated, and be sure to comment down below and let me know if you guys have any questions. Now, just before I dive into the 6 main points, in order to really benefit from this, you're obviously going to need to have completed the campaign and hit level 20. Once you hit level 20, your first job is to hit 265, since initially that is your soft cap for things like rare engrams, items from the rep vendors, stuff like that. So to begin with, on your journey to 265, you can quite honestly do pretty much anything. Public events, lost sectors, adventures, strikes, you name it. However, do note that I said pretty much anything. What you want to be mindful of is your milestones, and this brings me into point number 1. Powerful gear and luminous engrams. In Destiny 2, most engrams you obtain roll their power level the moment you pick them up. You can see that by going to your inventory screen and hovering over the engram. This means that if you got it when you were say 265, then saved it till you were 280, it has still dropped gear at 265. So largely these engrams are best used as and when you get them. However, luminous engrams, these are different. On your milestones tab on your director, you will see that certain milestones reward rare or legendary gear, meanwhile others award powerful gear. Powerful gear is luminous engrams, and luminous engrams scale with your power level. So let's say for example you complete the Nightfall at 270. You go to Zavala and you pick up that engram, the luminous engram. It'll then drop gear relevant to your light. A little better, yes, because powerful engrams is one of your core means to level up. But if you dismiss it, leave the engram with Zavala and then continue leveling the old-fashioned way and return when you are say 275, 280. Then that luminous engram will have scaled with your new power level, providing you get more useful gear to further increase your power. So, while it may be tempting to use these early on, especially when you think you've hit a wall and you just can't seem to break through that next power threshold, honestly, the longer you can wait, the better. I didn't open my first luminous engram until I was about 272, 273 power level, then my second one and my third one I waited until I was around 280. It is a patient game, and with the raid drawing ever closer, the temptation to just be done with it and open them is there. But the longer you can hold off, honestly, the better you will be. See, when you get higher in power, your options start to thin out, and really your main 2 options at the top are these engrams and exotics. So using them much later is the difference between sitting around 280 and breaking through to 290. Each character has, from what I've been able to determine thus far, 4 powerful engrams that you can earn per week. 1 from the Nightfall milestone, 1 from the Crucible milestone, 1 from the Flashpoint milestone, and 1 from the Clan XP milestone. So if you're not in a clan, definitely try and join one, because that is some free powerful gear that you would be missing out on otherwise. Of course, if you have multiple characters, then that can be a little bit more, but we'll speak more about that topic in just a moment. For the time being, just remember, try to save these powerful gear engrams, the luminous engrams, for as long as possible. You can dismiss them at NPCs, you won't lose them, so try and think of them as the absolute final step in your raid prep, the last thing that you do. But if you're going to save them, then the question remains, what do you do in between there? Well, number 2 is Infusion and mods. Infusion is of course an incredibly important part of gearing up. Not only does it allow you to power up the gear and weapons you actually want to use, but it's also a way to boost your power level in the process. It's worth noting though, that Infusion works a little differently now. First and foremost, you can't infuse gear across classes, so you can't put say a Warlock chest piece into a Hunter chest piece, like you used to be able to. But then the counterpoint to that is that you no longer get other class items dropping for you either, so as a Hunter you will never see anything but Hunter gear. In addition to that, weapons can only be infused with those of the same type, so you can't, say, infuse an auto rifle with anything in the kinetic or energy slot. You can only infuse auto rifles with other auto rifles, scouts with scouts, swords with swords, etc. This does of course make things a little bit more tricky, especially for weapon variety, because while you want to hit the highest possible power level, you also want to have options. I mean, being 280, 290 or even 295 with only one very specific weapon and gear configuration isn't really that useful, because if you then need to change in the raid and that drops you down considerably, then it's going to hurt you. So, what I will say on that front is try to think about the bigger picture before dismantling your gear. If you get a 280 rocket launcher and you're already using, say, a 285 fusion rifle, think about hanging on to it so that you have other options within your power bracket. Plus, when you go to infuse stuff later, you might find that you already have the candidate for infusion since you saved it. However, in addition to that, I want to quickly explain the infusion system since the introduction of mods makes things a little more complicated than before, and has left some people a little bit confused when they go to infuse an item and realise that it doesn't come out the way they thought it would. See, weapons and gear now have mod slots. Some items have no mods in, some items drop with mods in, and some items drop with legendary mods. Now, no mods and blue mods are, in the infusion equation, essentially the same thing. Meanwhile, legendary mods actually give you +5 defense, aka power, on that item. Take this exotic for example. It's listed as 285, but what that actually means is it's 280 plus a 5 power mod. Now, if you infuse this into something without a mod, what you're actually infusing is the base 280 item, and the mod will then get lost in the process. Mods are not transferred in infusion, they are instead consumed. The item that you are infusing, i.e. the item you are dismantling, everything on that is lost, including the mod. Here is an example where I forgot to check, and I made a stupid mistake. I was tired, and I basically messed up my infusion, but this is basically to show you guys what you should never do. I have this Sura sniper, and I want to put this Darcy exotic into it. What I of course forgot to do was check to see if my sniper had a legendary mod. It didn't, so whilst infusing this 286 exotic into this unmodded 265 sniper rifle, what I'm actually doing, since the mod will be lost, is infusing a 281 exotic, hence why the sniper rifle came out at 281 and not 286. However, if I had slotted a legendary mod into that sniper before the infusion process, the mod would have remained, giving me the +5, and the weapon would have come out at 286. Now, when you're 280, this isn't actually the end of the world, because you can actually buy legendary mods. So I was actually able to fix this error by simply going to the gunsmith, grabbing a legendary mod, putting it back in the sniper, and then it returns to 286. No harm done. However, when you're trying to break into that 2.8 window, it is very important that you pay attention to this. It's rare, but sometimes weapons and gear can drop with legendary mods on. If they do, be sure to hang on to these and use these as your base items and infuse items into those. Because if you make an infusion mistake sub 280 and you were relying on that infusion to push you over 280, then it's going to set you back a bit. So anytime you get gear or weapons with legendary mods in, hold on to them. Once you're into the 280 window though, then the next few power levels are pretty easy, because you can then go through the gunsmith, buy legendary mods for gear and weapons, each of these providing +5 defense or +5 power on individual pieces. So the second you hit 280, then you can instantly go and boost up to say 283, 284, depending on your gear setup, since you can replace any blue mods with the legendary mods and then boost up from there. However, moving on from there, in at number 3, let's talk reputation vendors. I mentioned earlier that during the leveling process, they have a sort of soft cap, whereby everything you get from them will then go no higher than 265, and that's true to begin with. However, once you break into the higher 270 power curve, I'm not entirely sure the exact threshold since I jumped quite a bit, but once you're higher up the bracket into say 276, 277, or even pushing into 280, you'll notice that the vendors drop items around say 270 or even 274, and while this might not seem useful if you're say 280 plus, what you need to remember is that sometimes mods are again artificially inflating your power level. Say one of your gear pieces is 275, but it's only that because you have a +5 mod in it. What you can then do is go down to one of the planets, hand in your rep tokens, get a piece that is say 274 without a mod, and then slap a legendary mod in it, in turn pushing it up to 279. This is a little bit of a slow process, but as is the way when grinding power, it's about eliminating your weakest possible items, so you can then bring up your baseline, so that when you do go back and use those powerful engrams, the luminous engrams, you're able to get the most out of them. So with that in mind, now that you're climbing the power curve, you're using your vendors to eliminate your low level items, and you've got your luminous engrams just sitting there, waiting to be opened, what do? What fills this gap? Well, the answer is number 4, exotics. Exotic engrams. Yes, they're rare, but they're also very much something you can farm. I've mentioned this in a couple of my exotic item videos, but public events are by far one of the best, most lucrative ways to farm exotic engrams. If you pick a planet that has a good rotation, Nessus works quite nicely, so does the EDZ, Titan is great if you can catch the loop at the right time. Whatever you choose, if you pop a Fireteam Medallion, which gives you increased rewards, and you ensure that you are always hitting the heroic version of the public events, then you're maximizing your chances at an exotic. Now sure, you won't get one every time, every second time, or even every 10th time, but in my time playing Destiny 2 so far, I've probably had about 10 exotic engrams, and they've all come from the same place. Open the chests at the end of public events. You can also get them from the Crucible, so if that's your preferred game type and you're more of a PvP player than PvE, by all means just sit there and play games back to back. But for me, I find it quite fun to just chill out, run a planet in loops, and farm events back to back. Exotic engrams are good because they drop at a higher power level. Even if the listed power level on the engram is a tad lower, they usually roll a bit above, so these can be systematically used again to bring up your baseline. I've been fortunate enough to boost some of my weaker slots, like my helmet, just through exotics, so this is an important part of your journey. And it's also something you can do in between, say, hitting 280, 285 and opening those powerful engrams. Perhaps spend a day farming, getting as much as you can, and then finally, once you're done, once you feel like you can't go any further, then resort to your luminous engrams at the end of the day. Also, if you're doing public events, you're getting tokens which can then be handed into the vendors in turn to snag some of those items I spoke about earlier. But if you've done all of that and you still want more power, then it's time for the long process. Number 5, create a second and third character. This is something you're going to want to do at some point anyway, since having 3 characters means you can run the Nightfall 3 times a week, the raid when it comes around trials, and more importantly, milestones are also per character. So those 4 luminous engrams that you're holding onto, multiply that by 3, and you actually have 12 luminous engrams. However, again, unlike Destiny 1, since you can't cross-infuse class gear, you need to think sensibly about how you want to do this. In my case, I'm a hunter. I always have been and I always will be, so I have 3 hunters. This is by far the fastest way to level, because it means that absolutely everything I earn is relevant to me at all times. I will never get a piece of Warlock or Titan gear that I can't use. So when decrypting exotics or luminous engrams, everything boosts my power. You get to level 20, you swap your gear over, and your new level 20 is already 280, 285, whatever you were before. You can then go through the process of completing your milestones and end game activities, and since you're a higher power level and drops will be relevant to that level, you can further boost your power. Of course, if you want a bit more variety in your life and you do want one of each class, you can still make this work. It's a little bit slower, but you can still share the weapons across to help boost your power level considerably, and again, you can use them whilst doing activities to give you better quality drops early on, but on the gear front, it will be a bit slower. And of course, since luminous engrams are decoded the second you pick them up, they can't be passed between characters like other engrams. So while they're still useful, they will only ever be useful to that one character. So if you have 3 hunters, then again, it's applicable to everything. If you're using one of each, then it's a little bit more limited. That being said, if you are going to level a second or third character, be sure to run with those fire team medallions, since they give you increased XP gains, and that'll help the 1-2-20 journey be that much faster. Of course, if you're having those Focus Light XP codes from the Pop-Tarts, that's also going to help you out, but for those of you guys just working for things in-game, then fire team medallions are a must. But aside from that, that's really all there is to it. Those are, for the kind of top end, if you're trying to sort of push to the higher power levels, the best tips I can offer you. So in summary, save your powerful luminous engrams for as long as possible, infuse into gear that has legendary mods, and then buy and craft mods when you break through 280. Use reputation vendors to replace any artificially inflated items and then mod them to bring you back up. Farm exotics, and make second and third characters. With all this in place, 280 will be a breeze, and 290 will roll in when you finally cash in those final luminous engrams. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys. We've still got a few days before the raid, so there is still plenty of time to grind, and there's also a weekly reset just before then too, giving us time to complete those milestones all over again and snag another batch of powerful engrams. So if you do all of this, you and your team will have the best possible chance in the raid. Any questions, by all means drop them down below, but thank you very much for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.